There's no resource to help with the idea that I'm still married to a man who's going through divorces.
Oh, Mom, I didn't even...
Today we're diving into explosive truths about Cody and Robyn Brown, and trust me when I say this, what I'm about to reveal will leave you stunned. The entire Brown family has reached a point where they want nothing to do with them. But the real question is, what went so terribly wrong? Why have their own children and extended family members pushed them away? And how did the tragedy of Garrison Brown's memorial become the spark that ignited this full-blown family war? Stay with me, because the details are fiery, heartbreaking, and nothing like what you've seen on television. A close source, someone directly involved in organizing the Nevada memorial service for Robert Garrison Brown, reached out with revelations that change everything we thought we knew. This service took place in March 2024, and from the beginning, things weren't smooth. On the show, Cody had once spoken about wanting to bring Garrison home and bury him in the ground, making it sound simple and fatherly. But behind the scenes, that same desire raised red flags, because he wasn't just grieving. He was making demands that clashed with Garrison's wishes and the family's decisions. The person who contacted me was deeply involved in the memorial, handling both the service details and the cremation process. According to them, the National Guard played a significant role, but not in the way Cody wanted the world to believe. While the family wanted a private, dignified farewell, Cody allegedly pushed for something entirely different. Something with cameras, with spectacle, with TLC. And that was the first crack in an already fragile wall. It ties back to what Gwendolyn and Mykelti have hinted at in the past, that something went horribly wrong during Garrison's funeral. It wasn't just grief that tore the Browns apart, it was betrayal. Since that day, Cody has been unable to reconcile with most of his children. Every phone call ignored, every text left unanswered. The distance has only grown colder. The family isn't just fractured, it's melting down, and Cody himself seems to be the common denominator. To understand how messy this became, you need to know a little about Garrison's life and service. As a member of the Nevada National Guard, he had prepared for the unthinkable. Like all soldiers, he set up his will, handled his power of attorney, and made sure his wishes would be respected if tragedy struck. That included his wishes for his own remains. In Garrison's case, cremation was his choice, and it was honored. Janelle and her sons were entrusted with his urn, and the family expected a somber, dignified service without interruptions. But Cody Brown had different ideas. Behind the veil of mourning, the military's mortuary services department handled the arrangements, ensuring everything was lawful and respectful. They managed the insurance, the estate, and coordinated the ceremonies. It was supposed to be seamless, allowing the family to grieve without stress. But what my source revealed is where the shocking twists begin. When Janelle and her sons received Garrison's ashes, it should have been a private, sacred moment. But just before the service, whispers began circulating. Cody was planning to bring TLC cameras into the memorial, turning Garrison's final goodbye into reality TV content. The family was horrified. According to reports, a relative of Janelle's confronted Cody directly, telling him in blunt, angry words that he was not welcome. No cameras, no TLC, and most importantly, no Robyn. Why? Because Garrison had despised Robyn. Their relationship was bitter to the core. He had openly rejected her, and the way she and Cody had treated him on television, the coldness, the bullying, the emotional neglect, had weighed heavily on his mental health. His last wishes were crystal clear. He wanted nothing to do with Robyn, even in death. Respecting him meant excluding her. But Cody and Robyn weren't about to listen. Despite being told not to come, Cody showed up. He arrived with Robyn by his side and TLC cameras trailing behind them, as if it were a grand entrance to a Hollywood premiere rather than a grieving son's memorial. The moment they walked in, the atmosphere shattered. What had been somber and quiet turned into icy tension. My source described it like this: the air in the room shifted, the warmth disappeared, and it was as though everyone had been punched in the chest. And the worst part? Cody and Robyn didn't walk in humbled or apologetic. They entered like royalty, their heads high, their expressions smug, as though the family should be grateful for their presence. My source said it was chilling, comparing them to show ponies, strutting in for a performance. Instead of mourning, it felt like a spectacle, and the family was left seething with anger. That day wasn't about grief anymore. It became the day Cody and Robyn burned the last bridge they had with the Browns.
We've got 4 other birthdays coming. It's kind of just an odd thing, the way we're doing birthdays right now.
The Brown family didn't just feel Cody and Robyn's presence was unwelcome, they felt it was downright disrespectful. The atmosphere at Garrison's memorial was already heavy with grief, but the moment Cody and Robyn walked in, it shifted into anger and disbelief. It wasn't just their faces that unsettled everyone. It was the fact that they came wired with microphones, ready to film. Imagine that. A grieving family trying to honor their fallen son, only to realize that 2 people who had been specifically told not to attend had turned the most sacred farewell into a stage for reality TV. The fury in the room was immediate. They told Cody and Robyn to stop, that this was not the place, that the cameras had no right to be there. But their obsession with capturing footage wasn't some innocent accident. It was calculated. Garrison himself had made his feelings toward the show crystal clear before his passing. His last text revealed just how much he despised being paraded in front of TLC's cameras. He hated it. And yet here was Cody, ignoring his son's dying wishes, forcing the lens of reality TV onto a moment that was supposed to belong only to the family. The Browns were terrified that Cody would twist the memorial into a performance centered on himself, stealing from Garrison's legacy to fuel his own redemption arc. They were right to fear it, because despite their protests, TLC filmed anyway. Against the cries of his children and ex-wives, the cameras rolled, and the entire family watched in horror as Cody made the funeral less about a son's sacrifice and more about his own spotlight. But as shocking as that was, what came next was even more devastating. The truth emerged that Cody might not have had any legal standing in Garrison's life at all, not on paper, not in the ways that mattered. For all of his arrogance and all of his claims, Garrison's birth certificate reportedly didn't even have Cody's name listed. Legally, Cody wasn't his father. Janelle had made sure her children were secured and properly registered, but in Garrison's case, the paperwork told a story that stripped Cody of any entitlement. That meant no rights to the ashes, no rights to the estate, and no authority to stand in front of cameras and pretend he was the man in charge. What shattered Cody's ego even further was Garrison's will. Long before his passing, Garrison had prepared his affairs with the kind of responsibility and foresight that spoke volumes about who he truly was. He gave Janelle full power of attorney. She was executor of his estate, the one entrusted with everything: his home, his insurance, his final arrangements. Cody wasn't mentioned anywhere. Not in the will, not in the insurance policy, not even in passing. It was as though Garrison had erased him entirely, deliberately locking him out of his life even after death. For the rest of the family, there was a bittersweet relief in this discovery. They knew Garrison's voice had been heard. He had protected his mother and cut Cody and Robyn out completely. When Janelle and her sons took possession of the urn, the atmosphere should have been one of quiet sorrow and unity. Instead, Cody and Robyn stormed in with TLC cameras, shattering the silence and demanding the spotlight. The family was left asking the same question over and over. Why? Why would Cody drag cameras into a room of tears? Why would he bring Robyn, the one person Garrison had openly loathed, into a service meant to honor his memory? The answer, according to those who were there, was chilling. This wasn't about grief, it was about image. Cody wanted to craft a story, a tragic father robbed of his son, standing alone against a family painted as cruel and heartless toward him and his devoted wife. Robyn wasn't there to mourn, she was there to provoke, to make sure the cameras captured the drama. My source told me Cody had staged the moment like a twisted production. He wanted the footage to paint him as the broken father, devastated and victimized, while the family came across as cold. He wanted Robyn beside him, front and center, even though he knew Garrison couldn't stand her, because the outrage itself would fuel his narrative. To him, Garrison's memorial wasn't a goodbye. It was an opportunity to reframe his tarnished image on national television. But the family didn't let him seize the stage so easily. When Cody demanded to sit at the front beside Janelle, Playing the part of the grieving patriarch, Janelle's relatives pushed back hard. They refused to let him take that spot. Instead, Hunter, Janelle's son, and an Air Force officer sat with her in the front row, an unmistakable statement about who had earned the right to be there. Cody and Robyn were pushed to the back, their presence a shadow rather than a centerpiece. It was a humiliating rejection for a man desperate to control the story. Even Mary's actions spoke volumes. She quietly sat beside Gwendolyn, offering comfort where Cody would not. That single act underlined what the family had known for years, that when it came to supporting the children, Cody had long since failed. The seating chart itself became symbolic. It wasn't just about who sat where. It was about who truly belonged and who no longer had the right to stand as family. And then came the most painful moment of all, the presentation of the flag and medals. By military tradition, they are handed to the next of kin, the person legally recognized as closest to the fallen soldier. But since Cody wasn't even listed on Garrison's birth certificate, he wasn't considered next of kin. The father he had tried so hard to portray himself as in front of TLC cameras was nowhere to be found in the eyes of the law. The family didn't just mourn Garrison that day. They mourned the father he should have had, but never truly did.
But he doesn't need to not be there. I mean, in fact, it should be the other way around. He should be there, present.
The silence after Garrison's funeral was not the kind of silence that heals. It was the silence that burns. The family had gathered, some still clutching tissues, others holding onto each other for support. But the wound Robyn left by walking in uninvited was deeper than the tragedy they were all mourning. Whispers moved across the room like fire on dry grass. Nobody had expected her, and nobody wanted her there. Yet there she was, face pale, eyes brimming with tears, as if she carried the weight of her own guilt, but refused to set it down. The shock of her presence split the family in ways even death hadn't managed to. Cody's eyes darted nervously as he realized everyone's focus was shifting from grief to anger. He had tried to keep it together for appearances, but the truth was written on his face. He knew Robyn shouldn't have come, and yet he had no strength to stop her. Mary's expression hardened, her lips pressed together so tightly it seemed like she was holding back words sharp enough to pierce the air. Christine glanced at Janelle, and in that single look, they both understood. Robyn had just reignited a fire that had been dying down since their separation from Cody. Aurora clutched Robyn's arm, trembling, as if she sensed what was about to unfold. But Robyn stood firm, letting her tears fall, making sure everyone saw them. She wanted the room to believe she belonged there, that her grief was as legitimate as theirs. But the truth was, every breath she took in that room felt like an intrusion. Mary broke the silence first. Her voice was low but cutting. "You shouldn't be here." The words fell heavy, and every eye turned to her. The weight of the statement wasn't just about the funeral. It was years of betrayal, favoritism, and manipulation crashing down in one raw moment. Robyn's lips quivered as she whispered, "I loved him too." But the room bristled. Janelle's face twisted with pain as she shook her head. "Don't you dare. Don't you dare stand there and pretend you were part of his life when you weren't. Garrison deserved better than this show." Her voice cracked but was filled with conviction. Cody tried to intervene, stepping toward Janelle. "That's enough," he hissed, but his voice lacked power. It was like the family no longer recognized him as the patriarch he once believed himself to be. His authority had crumbled alongside his marriages, and in that moment he looked smaller than he ever had before. Christine stood, her voice trembling but loud. "You isolated him, Cody. You chose her and her children while you abandoned ours. Don't try to rewrite history today. Garrison needed a father. He needed you. But all he got was silence." Tears rolled down her cheeks, but her anger was unstoppable. The atmosphere turned suffocating. Even the guests, distant relatives, and friends shifted uncomfortably, realizing this was no longer just a funeral, it was a reckoning. The cameras that TLC had insisted on bringing, discreetly tucked in corners, suddenly found themselves capturing one of the rawest confrontations in Sister Wives history. Producers, who had been hesitant about filming the funeral, knew this footage would set the internet ablaze. Robyn's face turned red as she looked around the room, realizing the depth of rejection. "I didn't come here to fight," she pleaded, voice breaking. "I came here because I loved Garrison too. He was..." She stopped herself, but the hesitation only fueled the other's anger. "Loved him how?" Janelle snapped, her grief transformed into fury. "When was the last time you even spoke to him? When was the last time you asked how he was doing? Don't stand here and try to make this about you." Her words cut like knives, and Robyn winced as if they had sliced her open. The tension boiled over when Gabriel, Garrison's younger brother, stood up, his voice shaking with rage. "You don't get to be here. You don't get to cry like you lost something when you were part of the reason he was lost in the first place." His words pierced the room, echoing louder than any adults had. Tears streaked his face as he pointed directly at Cody. "And you abandoned him. Don't think any of us are going to forget that." Cody's jaw tightened, his eyes glistening, but no words came. For the first time in a long time, he looked cornered. Not by wives, not by financial struggles, but by the undeniable truth of his own children's pain. The family began to splinter right there in the funeral hall. Some of the guests whispered about how distasteful the scene was, but others leaned in, captivated by the rawness of the drama. TLC producers exchanged glances, knowing this wasn't just content, it was history in the making. Robyn's tears turned into sobs, but nobody moved to comfort her. For years, she had been the center of Cody's world, but here, surrounded by the remnants of his other families, she was an outsider. She turned toward Cody as if begging him to step in, to defend her, but he stood frozen, torn between protecting her and facing the truth his family was hurling at him. Christine finally walked up to Robyn, her voice quiet but firm. "Leave." The word was final, not shouted, but it carried the weight of every betrayal, every heartbreak, every silent night she endured while Cody favored Robyn. "This isn't your place." For a moment, Robyn didn't move. Her eyes darted around the room, searching for sympathy, for someone to stand with her. But all she found were cold stares and tear-streaked faces filled with resentment. Finally, with Aurora pulling at her arm, she turned and walked out, her sobs echoing down the hall. The door closing behind her sounded like the final nail in the coffin of whatever remained of the Brown family's illusion of unity. But the story didn't end at the funeral. What followed was a storm that shook the family to its core and spilled into the public eye with unstoppable force. Social media erupted within hours. Hashtags like #Justice for Garrison, Robyn uninvited, and #Cody failed trended across platforms. Fans dissected every detail, some sympathizing with Robyn's grief, but most condemning her appearance as selfish and performative. The narrative spread like wildfire. Robyn had turned Garrison's funeral into her stage. In the days that followed, interviews began to surface. Extended family members spoke anonymously, confirming what viewers suspected, that Robyn hadn't been close to Garrison in years, and her presence was a shock to everyone. Even TLC insiders leaked whispers that the producers hadn't invited her, and that she had shown up despite their warnings that her presence might escalate tensions. The fallout inside the family was worse. Gabriel refused to speak to his father, at all, blocking his calls and publicly liking posts that slammed Cody's absence from his children's lives. Janelle stood by her surviving kids, her grief morphing into a fiery determination to protect them from further harm. Christine, meanwhile, found herself stepping into a role she hadn't expected, to be the voice of the children Cody had left behind, speaking out against the patterns that had led to this tragedy. Mary, often the quiet one in recent years, shocked everyone by finally breaking her silence publicly. In a live stream, she didn't name Robyn directly, but said, "Some people show up for appearances, not for love. But grief isn't a performance, it's lived, it's carried." Her words were shared widely, and though Robyn's supporters tried to defend her, the majority of fans sided with Mary. Robyn, meanwhile, retreated into silence. Paparazzi spotted her days later, face hidden under sunglasses, avoiding questions about why she attended. But silence only fueled speculation. Rumors began swirling that Cody and Robyn's marriage had been shaken by the fallout, with insiders claiming Cody had accused her of making things worse by going against his advice. TLC faced its own storm. Critics accused the network of exploiting the family's grief by filming, while others praised them for showing the unfiltered reality of the Browns' collapse. But executives saw what nobody else did: ratings. The episode featuring the funeral and its fallout was projected to become the most watched in the show's history, and though it was controversial, it guaranteed another season. Behind the scenes, however, Cody and Robyn were crumbling. Their united front had cracked under the weight of public backlash and private blame. Cody, facing the wrath of his children, began lashing out in private arguments with Robyn, accusing her of making everything about her. Robyn, in turn, felt abandoned. She had expected Cody to defend her, but he had stood frozen in the funeral hall, watching as his family turned on her. Christine, Janelle, and Mary, for once, found themselves united. Though their relationships had been fractured for years, grief and anger pulled them together into a powerful alliance. Together, they began pushing back not only against Cody, but against the narrative that had long painted Robyn as the innocent victim. They weren't just ex-wives anymore. They were survivors of a system that had broken their children, and they were determined to make sure Garrison's memory wasn't overshadowed by Robyn's tears. The twist that shocked everyone came weeks later when documents surfaced suggesting that Robyn had tried to contact TLC producers privately before the funeral, begging them to allow her to speak on camera about Garrison, framing it as her chance to show the family's unity. Producers had denied her request, fearing it would spark outrage, but Robyn had shown up anyway. When this leak hit the media, the outrage doubled. What had been speculation turned into scandal. Robyn became the villain in a story she could no longer control. And Cody? He became the man who had lost not just one son, but the trust of nearly all his children. The family, once united by faith and polygamy, was now bound only by grief and resentment. As the season drew to a close, TLC teased what was to come. Robyn breaking down in a solo interview, Cody finally facing Gabriel on camera, and Mary, Janelle, and Christine standing together in a way fans had never seen before. The teaser ended with a chilling line from Christine. "You can't rewrite the past, Cody. You can only live with it." And with that, the saga of the Browns entered a new, darker chapter, one where love and loyalty were no longer enough to hold them together, and where every choice, every betrayal, every uninvited step into a sacred space carried consequences too heavy to bear.